All right. The Bungie exposés continue with this headline coming to us. Former Bungie legal exec reveals studio hired fans to save money. Fans would work for less. So obviously some morally questionable hiring practices from Bungie. Let's jump into the entirety of this article and see what this is all about. We have former Bungie legal chief officer Don McGowan reveals how the studio hired fans, saved money, and discusses unionization efforts, layoffs, and internal tensions. All right. Bungie, the studio behind the iconic franchises like Destiny and upcoming Marathon reboot, have been navigating turbulent waters. In recent months, the company has faced 2 waves of layoffs, letting go of over 300 employees, including many longtime staff members. We already know this. This downsizing occurred alongside delays for Marathon, which is now pushed to 2025. While Bungie has attributed these setbacks to a need to refocus, some former employees are speaking out, shedding light on a more complex picture of the company's internal dynamics. All right. Among them is Don McGowan, who served as Bungie's general counsel during a pivotal time in its history, including its acquisition by Sony Interactive Entertainment. In a recent interview with the International Alliance of Theatrical Stage Employees, McGowan pulled back the curtain on Bungie's hiring practices and management strategies. We hired fans because fans would work for less. According to McGowan, Bungie often leveraged its fans' passion for its games at a cost-saving strategy. The studio's hiring approach, he explained, included targeting dedicated players who would accept lower wages simply for the chance to work on something they loved. Now, obviously, this is referenced a little bit in Chris Baird's story, where he obviously was going through this lengthy lawsuit with Bungie right now, and he said that, initially he was just making passionate projects for the game's myth, I believe it was, and he was hired by Bungie, or his work was used by Bungie, and then he was offered a role at a very, very low salary, but he denied that, and he was offered a much higher salary afterwards. Now, this practice, while it might be morally questionable, there's nothing illegal about this necessarily, and obviously if you're a startup company like Bungie was in their early days, when referencing that Christopher Baird story, maybe you have to come up with some creative strategies to hire employees, and I don't know, I think that it's a rough strategy, especially when you're a multi-billion-dollar corporation. So we'll see what they get into with this year. With gaming companies, one of the things they could get away with is low pay because you're working on a game you love, said McGowan. And we totally took advantage of that at Bungie. We hired fans because fans would work for less. Yikes. When I came over from the Pokemon company to Bungie, about 1 in 3 people asked me, how much of a pay cut are they making you take? Interesting. So a lot of people were assuming that by coming from Pokemon to Bungie, that they would be receiving a substantial pay cut. So presumably Nintendo paying a lot better. And then they said, you don't want that effing reputation. But when you only hire fans, you can get away with that. So apparently people insinuating that this is a common practice for Bungie, hiring fans and then using their passion for the game to kind of lowball them in their salaries. McGowan also talked about the discussions of unionization in the games industry. He shared an anecdote from his time at Bungie that highlighted these whispers. When I was at Bungie, there were discussions of unionization there. So my employment lawyer, who was a woman named Lindsay, she was in a meeting with somebody, was like, do you think you and Don McGowan could do a presentation for us on unions, my bad. I was like, onions? There's a big difference between unions and onions. Feel free to roast me down in the comments below. Comment onion if you made it this far in the video. She came and told me this and was like, how did you answer that? And she said, well, my answer was, I don't think you want the company's head lawyer telling you about unionization because he's probably got some positions that the company requires him to hold. Got you? He also explained a common tactic used in the industry to address unionization efforts, promoting potential organizers. McGowan described how this approach is often deployed to diffuse union momentum by altering the organizer's role. You promote out of being able to organize. Once you give them people who report to them, they are no longer part of the bargaining unit, he explained. Gotcha. So some anti-unionization tactics from Bungie or other game developers. McGowan also revealed that during the time at Bungie, the company had approximately 1,600 employees. Earlier this year, CEO Pete Parsons confirmed that the workforce now stands at 850 team members building Destiny and Marathon. This indicates a staggering workforce reduction of nearly 47% within 1 year, which is a massive drop-off. In an interview with game developer, McGowan also talked about how the game industry must unionize. In related news, Chris Barrett, a former game director of the company, filed a $200 million lawsuit. We got all of that. What are your thoughts down below? Yep. Now, obviously, the layoff situation, this is something that we've talked about a few times before, so I don't want to beat a dead horse here, but there's been a ton of layoffs within the gaming industry as a whole. It's not just Bungie. The reason why people got really salty at Bungie specifically for this was because of their Sony acquisition. They said that because of the Sony acquisition and the accumulation of so much money from all of that, that they wouldn't need layoffs. But unfortunately, that wasn't really the situation, or at least that wasn't the situation immediately, because that happened in 2022, the acquisition, and in 2024, we obviously saw a massive amount of layoffs this year. This is obviously a lot of bad PR for Bungie. This seems to be happening over and over again. Now, Pete Parsons himself usually comes out during times like these, but Pete himself has gotten such a bad name as the CEO with his car collection and with all the other testimonies that people have given speaking against him now, that I feel like Pete making another article is probably going to be received very poorly. And a lot of people are still calling for him to step down. And it's not a good look right now for Bungie. I think that Bungie is really in a crisis right now. And there's a crisis it's a battle on multiple fronts if you think about it, right? It's not just the internal issues with Bungie and, whatever this is, hiring fans to save less money, things of this nature, or even the Christopher Barrett lawsuit. They have their own internal problems. They have external problems. The game has problems in and of itself. It's kind of bleeding. Everything seems to be bleeding. And there's a lot of negativity surrounding around Destiny 2 right now and Bungie. But they continue to push forward. They're talking about heresy. They're talking about the future of the game. They seem to be excited for Frontiers. All of this chaos is happening simultaneously, and Bungie seems to be pushing forward as best as they can. But we are seeing some noticeably low points in Destiny in terms of population, in terms of Trials population. We recently saw the lowest population ever, and I think that during the end of this episode, before the next one starts, we're going to see some record low numbers with the Trials population and with just the general overall population, as the Dawning event has now launched. It's been a massive disaster at a time when Bungie could potentially make a lot of money. Obviously, the Christmas time, the holiday time, people are spending money. People are buying video games. People are buying video game consoles and video game console accessories, things of that nature, right? Well, I don't think as many people are going to be buying stuff from Bungie at this point in time, given all the bad PR, given the fails, given how the Dawning has fallen short. It's rough, bad. The projections are looking bad, and I think that with stuff like this, what this leads to is a necessity for Bungie to lay off even more people. And unfortunately, when this happens, we're already roasting Bungie for laying off 47% of their workforce, going from 1,600 down to 850. But if everyone continues to, whether it's fair or not, if it continues down this route, 850 members is going to turn to 750 members. 750 is going to turn to 500. Who knows at what point Bungie hits an absolute rock bottom where they can sustain with all of this stuff. But it's definitely not looking good. And hopefully Bungie can get their head out of their ass, so to speak, and get this all figured out. But we'll see. Let me know what you think down in the comment section below. How does Bungie dig themselves out of this one? That's a wrap. Make sure to subscribe, smash the like button. See you in the next one. Later.